Hey everybody, welcome to episode 22, our interview with Dawson Jaffe. Flying solo today as Skinny Guy this week is in the warm, wonderful weather of Florida. Well, it's got to be a hell of a lot better than what we're at right now because in this area we've got cold, we've got rainy, we've got damp. So, he's out there with Shannon and he's out there with some family members. So we hope you guys are having a great time because the weather sucks out here and it's not great. But yeah, we still love you guys. Have some fun. All right. But back to the episode. So as you know from listening to the bonus track last week, our guest this week is Dawson Jaffe. And from listening to the bonus track when she did the sound check, you can tell how much fun she is just from her reading. And you could tell also that, you'll tell once you listen to the episode, just how damn creative she is and how awesome she is in that world. I mean, with, she goes into her background and, where she started from and what drove her, what pushed her and, the kind of things that she's been working on and her dreams, her aspirations, all that good stuff. But she also gives some great advice for those folks who might be interested in costuming for LARP or for cosplay and anything creative. If you're creating something, she's definitely the person you want to listen to, you want to hear when it comes to those things. Lots of experience under her belt, a professional in every sense. And she was just an amazing interview. So an amazing guest. Want to take this opportunity to, as always, thank you, the listeners and our patrons, for supporting what we do. We really appreciate all the times that you actually download and you listen to us, even if it's for long car trips. We want to assume that we are more interesting than no music or a boring car trip. That you'll actually put us on and listen to us babble and talk, amongst ourselves, but also talk with amazing and really super interesting guests, just like our guest this week, Dawson Jaffe. So again, thanks for all of that. We got some new interesting things coming up on our Patreon. We've got new giveaways for our patrons. So if you get a chance, go on our Patreon and take a look and see what's going on. That's patreon.com/oldmanskinnyguy. And you can also join us on our Facebook group, which is Old Man and Skinny Guy, the group thing. If you just search for it that way, that's fine. Or you could just, follow us through our regular Facebook, which is facebook.com/oldmanskinnyguy. All right. So with that, I'm going to let you guys listen to this amazing interview with an amazing person, Dawson Jaffe. Enjoy.
Rafa's going to appreciate that shirt.
Oh, yeah. I think it half rolled through my head when I, pulled it out of the drawer this morning, but mostly I was like, oh, I haven't worn this shirt in a while.
Also, and it matches your microphone.
Yeah, it does. How about that? Yes. I'm very uniform. I mean, Chris, you sort of match. The gray and black. Right?
Yeah.
It's very, very business casual.
Look, I'm very low maintenance, okay? So, All right, so thank you very much for sitting down with us. We have with us Dawson Jaffe, and from the extensive research that we've done, from what I can gather, as a young girl, you were bitten by a radioactive fashion designer, which pretty much put you in the hospital for a couple of days, but did nothing. Other than you use your fashion design powers for good rather than evil. Right? That's
one would hope that is generally the practice.
Don't get me into a discussion on women's pockets.
Okay. But no, we asked you to be on the show specifically because we talk about gaming, but we also want to talk about the creative side of gaming, and you are definitely one of the most creative people that we know.
Yeah, and especially costume design is sort of a role to play in the LARPing community, which is how we first met you, I believe.
I guess so. I mean, I tend to think of myself much more as a constructor, as a builder, than as a designer, because I hate meetings and I like putting things together with my hands.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And that's most of what design is meeting with other people and making decisions on how things are going to look, or at least as a job. But design as just a quality is something that I feel is needed and can be explored in really interesting ways in gaming.
Okay.
And so I've been sort of looking into that more and trying to bring... go ahead.
How did you get your start just, going down the road of,
all right,
fashion design and clothing? And
I was a theater kid, and in my high school theater, you were expected to do tech as well as act. You couldn't just get on stage and flans about. You had to do sets or lights or costumes or something. So I wound up doing costumes, and then I went to college and I did more theater, and I wound up working in the costume shop there and learned some stuff and worked in the shop for a year, and that was really cool. I liked that a lot. Did some wardrobe.
Was this a lot of, hunting for pre-existing costume items, going to
a
thrift
fair
stores?
amount, yes. Hunting and altering what was there. We did a production of Into the Woods that involved... We had a dress downstairs. It was an 18th century dress, which someone had glued ribbon stripes on the whole thing.
Oh.
And
this sounds like it doesn't fall off every night.
No, it didn't. It wouldn't come off.
Oh.
So we had to, and we couldn't stitch through it because glue.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a special place in hell. And so we just had to glue different ribbon on top of that ribbon.
It's like layers of paint.
And that's before I knew how much acetone was in I lost some brain cells and some tweaked some genes during that period of time. I used a lot of we have a specific spray paint that we use on shoes, and I had a respirator for that. That honestly, that is a thing that I keep banging a drum about. Is I love the fact that there is. It's a little side note. I love the fact that there is this explosion of craft with LARP now, with people making their own weapons and all of this stuff. Oh my God, wear a goddamn respirator.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You'll get tumors. You will get tumors.
Yeah.
E6000, barge cement, all of that stuff will give you tumors like on the spot.
Yeah.
It's not going to be 50 years
labels.
down the road. It's going to be tomorrow. So wear a respirator, work in a ventilated area.
Yeah. Understand the tools that you're working with, hopefully.
Exactly. Moving on. So college, and then I graduated. And by the time I was graduating, I'm like, do I want to act? Do I want to work in tech? I'm just going to see where I get jobs.
Right.
So were you, both on stage and behind the scenes?
Yes.
You wanted to do both?
Yes, I was.
Okay.
And then I wound up, for a brief period of time, I did house managing, which is essentially a glorified usher, at least at the stage that I was at, and that sucked a lot. But then I wound up in a job that was wardrobe manager. So I also wound up doing sewing as well in between the shows. So it's nights and weekends, doing all the laundry, making sure that all the costumes are prepped and ready for the show,
making
doing
repairs,
all the quick, making repairs, doing the quick changes. Most of the alterations and that sort of stuff comes earlier. It's a lot of ironing and a lot of other people's underwear.
The glorious aspect of
yes, it's a shining job. No, it is. They are some of the unsung heroes of theater.
Without a doubt.
They put up with a lot of shit. It's terrible hours. So I found out that I really enjoyed the sewing part of it in between the shows. And my sister was in Austin at the time working for Steve Jackson, oddly enough. This relates to Shake Geek, but that's another story. And I went down to visit her, and one of my roommates was like, hey, there's a really great costuming program at UT Austin. You should go by there and check it out. I'm like, okay. So I went, and they assumed that I was applying, but I was just sort of like, oh, they told
look,
me to
Oh, I heard this was a thing that I'm interested in.
"Ooh, yeah. Oh, this is cool. They're teaching things. This looks really neat." So I started looking into grad school, and I applied to both design and construction programs at first, but found out through the process of applying to grad school that what I really wanted to do was construction and not design.
Mm-hmm.
I was actually in the middle of an interview because one of the teachers, one of the professors, so I think was sort of leading me in that direction anyway, because they were looking at my drawing and going, "Ooh, was, so what do you really enjoy about costuming?" And I started waxing poetic about the building.
Right.
And they're like, "Have you applied to any construction programs?" I'm like, "Yeah, I've applied to 2." They're like, "Yeah, you might consider."
Just a guiding
Just-
hand.
Yeah, just a hand on the small of the back as they ushered me out.
It's like, we're going to give you the kindest no we can. We're going to
Yes.
push you in the direction of the thing
Exactly,
we think you are
which
really
is honestly
looking
is
for.
great. Like, that's the best no you can possibly hope for.
Right.
So then I wound up in Boston at getting an MFA in costume construction, which was super great. I learned a whole lot. And I did a bunch of summer stock. I worked at places like Glimmerglass and American Players Theater over the summers. And
And is this more of the same, just on a grander scale? Are you still just like in the role of maintaining?
No, this is the
is
creation.
actually-
This is
yeah.
the creation. I, as a designer, as an architect, I'm an engineer. I can look at a drawing of a costume and go, okay, that's what that needs to
Yeah.
happen with that.
This piece needs
What
to be
is
this
that?
shape.
Yeah.
This needs to connect.
Tell me more about what's happening there, preferably with some research or a bit more of a technical rendering. You might want to consider this sort of fabric for here, that sort of thing, is be able to enter a dialogue with a designer
it's
about what they want.
Being
Okay.
able to do something from the very ground level on.
Exactly,
up,
yeah.
And like bring
Yeah.
it to fruition
to
and to actually
draping,
making
patterning, tailoring, draping, taking pieces of fabric and putting them on a stand, or taking pieces of paper and a ruler and plotting stuff out on a table and creating from that a garment, and which is awesome, and I love it.
Yeah, it sounds like I do leather work, and it sounds similar. Like when someone brings me a picture from a D&D manual and says,
Yes.
"Can you do this?" and I go, "Well, I could do it exactly like that," and you'll take one step and fall on your face, or I can make it realistic. So it
can make
sounds
it
similar to
functional.
that.
It's very similar.
Okay.
And it's also, there's this sort of like CIA aspect of it, which is, it's this beautiful 18th century dress. She needs to go down a fire pole, and she needs to be able to pull a wine bottle, a flower pot, and a kitten out of her skirt.
Wow,
Yeah.
oddly specific.
I mean, when we
The stuff she was pulling out, I made up. The fire pole, I did not make
Okay.
up.
No, so when we talked with Shannon about cosplaying, there was an entire section of the conversation we had where the idea of like, oh no, you need pockets and the ability to be able to sit down in these
Yeah.
like elaborate construction outfits
Yes.
that were designed for like an animated character to move in, not a real human being.
Right.
An interesting trend recently is a number of the students at NYU, which is where I work now, are interested in doing costume design for animation and for computer games.
Okay. So
So-
digital costume design.
Yes, essentially.
More or less.
And so I wind up kind of giving them some advice about that, because I'm like, first of all, learn your 3D rendering. Don't assume that you're going to be able to explain this to somebody else and have them, but you need to be able to make these images yourself in order to sell them.
Yeah.
But it's just an interesting sort of step from there, is that in a number of places, like the rendering of computer images has gotten to the point where you can really discuss the clothes that they're wearing, sort of separate from just this one whole cloth
Yeah.
image.
Right.
Or a static,
exactly.
flat image.
Ecstatic thing. So to get there, I graduated grad school, and then I went to New York, and because I was trying to decide if I wanted to work in regional theater for a while and then go to New York for a bit, or if I wanted to go to New York and then maybe move to regional theater. And all of my professors were like, do it while you're young. So
Get it out of the way now.
Yeah. Do it while you have the strength. So I moved to New York and started working at Corelli Costumes, which is was a Broadway house. You basically put bids in. It is a workshop of people of various talents. You have your drapers, who are the people who do the pattern making specifically. You have your first hands. First hands are the assistant to the draper.
Okay.
That's what I was. They often do a lot of the cutting. You take the pattern from the draper and you lay out the fabric and you cut that out, and then you hand it over to the stitchers. Stitchers, at least in the case of many of the professional shops, tend to be, or operators, also another term, tend to be older women from the old country. What old country? Every old country.
Wow. Okay.
Whichever one required a lot lot
Yeah.
It's all of them.
Yeah.
We had Moldova, we had Russia, we had Greece, we had Uruguay, we had Mexico, it's all over the place.
Damn.
And we also had craft workers who do more of the leather work and the millinery
Right.
and things that are more
building corsets and things like that, or
corset still falls under draping, but more like hats, like leather work,
like belting
painting,
and
dyeing. That falls under craft work, which
Okay.
is separate from draping and sewing.
Gotcha.
And so I worked there for 5 years, and I learned a lot. I worked on Chicago, I worked on Young Frankenstein, 30 Rotten Scoundrels, a couple of movies. I got to build a tutu for Boy George. That was a thing.
Oh, that's awesome.
It's huge.
That's awesome.
It's like this big. He is a large man.
the arms are spread wide for all the listeners
Yes.
to see.
He had like a 52-inch chest, if I recall.
Wow.
Yeah. And tall dude, too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw him in the dressing room, and he just looks like a British uncle, of some flavor. Yeah, so that was a thing. I was in an elevator with Felicia Rashad. She she noticed that I was inhaling my sandwich and commiserated with me on a short lunch break that I had.
So you've really had thus far you've had these amazing experiences that have brought you to where you are today.
Pretty much, yeah.
And how does all of that awesomeness translate into the awesomeness that you do now?
Well, all right. So gaming, I started after I got seriously into theater, but it was in high school. Essentially, my sister, who is also a giant nerd, Elaine, currently working for Steve Jackson, came back from college and proceeded to indoctrinate me into nerd culture.
Okay.
I mean, she'd sort of started me with
hey kid, I've been to college. Let me learn you about some nerdy stuff.
She started me some of the first long form books that I read were her Doctor Who novelizations back in the day. I remember wearing her Doctor Who scarf as like a sari, because that was the size. But she came back. She's like, "All right, we're going to play Vampire the Masquerade Edition 1." Also, my cousin worked for TSR, so there was TSR stuff just floating around.
Okay.
There was Dungeons and Dragons around. I just never played it. I'd read the books, but I never played it.
But it's kind of
No one ever ran.
so it's like in the DNA a little bit already.
A little bit. Gamed in college, met that jerk over there. That's Sean. And, sort of just continued being a nerd through the whole thing. And as we got more into live action stuff, obviously the costuming things came up with it. Now, having said that, because I do costumes for a living, I don't always have the best costumes at games because I get home and I don't want to sew.
Yeah. You already do that for work.
I do.
Gotcha.
Being a totally uncreative person, I still get that.
Mm-hmm.
That has to take so much mental energy just to be producing something, pardon the pun, out of whole cloth.
Yeah. So what? But one of the other things that I've picked up is the ability to mash together, and this is a little more of a wardrobe thing, or I guess a stylist thing, really, which is just to mash together a bunch of different pieces to make a costume for myself or someone else.
Okay.
So let me ask you a question. You've described, your background working in theater. There's that entire element of storytelling through costuming.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So you're now talking about taking different pieces and mashing them together to make it suit a character.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to think if I can put like a specific question to this, but like, what kind of things would you suggest people look into or learn about to try and learn that sort of storytelling?
This was exactly, I gave a lecture about this at was it Dreamation or DexCon? I think it was Dreamation, but about storytelling through costume. And a lot of it is, first of all, just like doing your research, like into your character, like look up the game,
learn the setting and
learn the setting.
Right.
If there's any, more and more games have pictures of like people's costumes and have like resources for that sort of thing. Look into that.
Yeah, even if we're just talking about like a D&D book.
Yeah,
on the race and class pages, you're going to see pictures of what those races and classes look like.
Yep.
And you can, find inspiration and stuff like that maybe, but look at whatever the game has to offer. Someone's put a lot of work into that world, and there's going to be iconography.
Exactly.
That you can like grab onto.
I mean, I would probably go so far as to say also that if you're not a gamer and you decide to actually, start putting together costuming, that you should probably start playing some games and just to kind of get your feet wet, so you kind of understand a little bit about, okay, so how does a gamer think in these terms, right? I mean, that's what I would think.
That's fair. I mean, a lot of what people learn pretty early on in doing costuming for LARP is, first of all, everything changes. You will roll in with a costume and a character, and very frequently those wind up shifting and changing. Both in the short term of like, oh, this wasn't as fun as I wanted it to be. Let me
or the long term of I need to have pockets.
Yeah. Well, that's almost more the short term. It's also I need to be warm during the winter.
Yeah.
I need to run through a muddy field, and perhaps the diaphanous trailing dress is not the best choice for this.
Or maybe it is because you're a glutton for punishment.
I need to be able to easily walk up and down stairs, maybe.
Yeah, that's another one. Oh man, I wish I had this whole list of like things that
like giant spiked heels in a muddy field.
Well, no, sort of just things that I suggest as a process for you to work your story into your costume. Because there's like the conception, there's your character conception, and then there's the research page, and then there's the sort of build page, but build folds into purchase or pull or things like that.
Gathering materials, putting them all.
Yes. Layering is key for making a costume look like it's lived in.
Yeah,
and
give it
like that's a real person.
To give it literal and, metaphorical depth.
Exactly. Scarves are great. Scarves are easy way to make something look like a little more personified. Like this is more of a person. I mean, and it's different from parlor LARP to campaign LARP or boffer LARP, where you need to kind of wear everything on your waist, and you just have to embrace that.
Yeah.
Parlor LARP, you can do more like, I'm going to have a hidden pocket here that no one knows about. Or I just leave everything in my hotel room. I don't really need any. I don't need to actually access.
The difference that we're talking about really being the environment that you're dealing with.
Yes, you need to be aware of your environment. And then there's the embellishment phase, which is, distressing and...
adding accoutrements.
Like embroidery, that sort of thing. Game of Thrones is funny. I have this relationship with the Game of Thrones where I don't watch it. I tried reading it and was like, I am depressed enough in life. No, there's enough bad stuff going on in life, and I really don't want to get involved with people that are going to die. But the costuming for the show is amazing. There are stories wrought into the fabric of those.
I've watched very, very little of Game of Thrones, but from what I've seen, it's in the same way that when
just Google it.
When there's
Lord
some
articles on some of the specifics of the costuming that are fantastic. Google is your friend.
Because when they put out all the additional information from Lord of the Rings, all the work that Weta did in designing and the different materials that they use for different purposes. We're talking about dealing with your environment. They're also dealing with cinema. So there's times where you can cheat.
Yeah.
Yeah, just a little,
maybe this chainmail isn't going to be made of real metal, and instead it's going to be like plastic.
Painted sweaters is usually the cheat for chainmail.
Yeah, or like
you,
a loose
you get like
knit
a
something. Yeah,
you sort of have an inside out sweater, and then you paint it. You dry brush it silver. It's the sneaky way to do chainmail.
Yeah, the things that look correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
So what kind of cheats have you done in your costuming that you would? I mean, would you even call them cheats or just
shortcuts? Maybe
shortcuts. Okay.
Shortcuts to a good costume. Like when you aren't going to be specific about something, go neutral.
Okay.
Like having sort of basic boots, having basic colors. If like
my LARP boots, I got from Son of Sandalar. It's pretty common around here, at least. I think they're down like Texas or something. I believe they do the Ren Fair circuit. Just a black boot that laces up.
Yep.
I've worn it in sci-fi games. I've worn them in fantasy games.
Yep.
I've worn them in modern games.
Yeah.
It works for everything.
Yeah, I have ankle issues, so my go-to are combat boots.
Yeah.
Just very plain, just get my wrap my ankles up and then just tighten the hell out of them with the lacing. And and they're so plain.
Yes.
And they're so basic. I use them for a lot of LARPing. So.
Yeah, and there's always like spats are a good way to sort of cheat that as well if you are going for a specific look, but you either can't afford to get like nice boots because nice boots are friggin' expensive.
Yeah.
Or you have foot issues that disallow your being able to rock that sweet ass pair of boots. Spats are
find something practical and then cover it.
Right? Yep. Like the military, some of the military canvasy spats look great.
Yeah.
Also,
to the end of covering things, we mentioned staying warm in the winter.
Yeah.
Yeah. Your underlayers, you can hide those.
Yeah.
So you can wear like modern.
Embrace the hidden underlayer.
Yeah.
Embrace the socks.
Yes.
Socks are all important.
Oh yeah. Absolutely.
But I'm sorry, I sort of cut you off there.
Yeah, where the hell was I? It's fine.
Boots, spats.
Boots, spats, yeah. Spats you can also turn into a corset, amusingly enough, if you lace them together.
Oh.
That's a thing I've done. Like,
okay.
Gaiters. Not so much spats, gaiters.
Okay.
The ones that come up to your knee.
Shin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because the foot part kind of goes over your hip. And
It becomes like a peplum?
Yeah. It just, I have a pair of gaiters that I just leave laced together because I tend to wear it as this sort of ersatz corset.
Hey, if it works.
Yeah, I think I saw it in some. FIT had like a steampunk thing happening, and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna steal that idea.
FIT being
Fashion Institute of Technology,
okay.
Which is a school in New York that also has a really cool free museum that I go to whenever I can. But yeah, just honestly, and one of the other things that I find helps with design is keeping like a stash of images.
Yeah, I was going to ask, where do you go for inspiration? What are things that are interesting to you that you like going to? Obviously,
Pinterest. I have an unhealthy relationship with Pinterest. Now, one of the things about Pinterest is that you need to check your shit with Pinterest. It is a wonderful resource. There's all kinds of images and stuff, but people are not good about noting what
the real source is.
What the real source is, what time period this actually came from, what artist did this. So use your Google reverse image search. Honestly, I follow some Broadway costume designers. I'm like, okay, if you're posting that period, I can put that here. I follow the Met Museum. The Met Museum has a Pinterest board where if they put a date on
these
a dress.
These are a little bit more of a trusted source.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. Find your trusted sources. Yeah. But yeah, just I love making boards for different characters. Honestly, they've been really valuable while wearing one of my other hats, when doing game design and talking to artists, having a board to show them when I'm trying to get them to figure out these pieces of art that they're making for a book, it's been invaluable.
Right.
Yeah, so you're sort of creating a style guide for them.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. Having a style guide and just, sticking stuff there for like, oh, this is a fantasy look I like, or this is a sci-fi look I like. And then you can sort of gestalt that into whatever costume you want to do next.
There's some friends of ours are putting together a game that I think launched its first full weekend event is Planes Break.
Plane break.
Plane Break.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think for a lot of their sort of what we want these races to look like, they effectively did that. They went online, they found images.
I know. I added some.
Oh,
They-
okay. Yeah.
So like,
Yeah.
can you talk about that a little bit? Like, how did that whole thing
I've done
come
this
together?
for a couple of people now, like where they've been like, "Hey, I'm doing this thing. Would you be into putting together some images for me?" I'm like, "Really? Sure. You're gonna let
an
me?"
excuse where someone wants me to do this.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, no, they kindly let me add stuff to their image folders, and
So-
I did.
So that was sort of creating like the style guide that we were talking about. What sort of
yes.
information were they giving you?
So there was the basic, like they'd had stuff in there already, so there was something to go off of, and it was for each of the races or factions of the game, and they gave me the sort of base description, and then again they already had the pictures in there, and I took that and ran.
So you just looked for common elements between
Yeah.
all three and just
Yeah.
expanded that out with other interesting things
Yep.
that made sense alongside it?
So what did they finally like? I mean, do you know like what they kind of settled on as far as the look?
Yeah, it is a varied look because it being sort of a Rifts adjacent game, there are people coming in from. It's not a direct timeline.
Right.
There are people coming from discrete times and places. So you have the human races of sorts, but that's the Novans, the Riders, the Ord folk, and the Archivists, each who have a completely different look, but only some of which are coming from a direct timeline.
Okay.
We talked about characters having tricorn hats.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
In a prior episode, I know it came up.
That's the Novans. The Novans are sort of, I would honestly tag them as basically 1830s, because there is some of the richness and the opulence of the 18th century, but also some of the more practically tailored and down to earth, beginning the Industrial Revolution
more
of the
uniform.
19th century. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I looked at a bunch of 1830s stuff for that, because you're starting to get that tailored shape and that sort of darker fabric. You've gone away from the silk and brocade of the 18th century, but you've still got this gold braid and all the dingle dang buttons and things.
Yep.
You got some frosting on that.
Yeah.
Some coats that button on the side.
Yes. Some hot double-breasted action. Yeah, so that's the Novans.
But it sounds like there was a lot of sort of historical influence for some of this.
For some of them, definitely. The Ord folk are Novan adjacent, and they are more. They're based heavily on the Pennsylvania Dutch. So they're more of a pastoral. Like they strip away all of the gold and the gilt and GILT, not GUILT.
I got plenty of that.
Yeah.
And they sort of roll things back to the 18th century a little bit, but in more of a like farm way.
So less of that, this was stamped out, in a sort of assembly line feel for the Novans. These guys are more of the hand-stitched, homespun.
Yes, yeah. All of instead of having the sort of uniform trim, you've got the hand-embroidered things.
Yeah,
that's
maybe
where
little,
your like knitted
instead
pieces.
of having all these, big, shiny, fancy, as much of it as we can cram on there, maybe it's just like a hand-stitched embellishment or something
Exactly.
like this.
Yes,
something
very
that
much.
feels very personal rather than very generic or mass-produced.
And then where that look is very personal and sort of tied to the earth and tied to the world in a way. The Archivists are in some ways have that personal element to their embellishment because it's part of their religion. So they have these handmade religious symbols, but it is very stark and futuristic because they are looking sort of back to what was, back to the tech that was.
Okay.
So it's sort of a retro-future thing, but it's almost monastic in its...
Are we talking like Grammaton cleric monastic?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Okay.
very much.
Reference to Equilibrium.
Thank you. I was
Yeah.
going nuts trying to remember the name.
Yeah,
All I could see was Christian Bale and Sean Bean.
Yeah.
yeah.
for the 5 minutes he was
Dies
in it. Yeah.
again.
Yes.
As usual.
Yes. So they're sort of in blacks and grays and
Very pressed and...
yes, yeah, very, and they've got, face masks often and they're it's like a take on a nun's habit in
So
a lot
it's
of
very
ways.
uniform.
Yeah, it has that uniformity, but in its simplicity more than in like the
like
sort of
specific
the sort of kick.
design.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
each of them seems very personal, but the uniformity is in the sort of severity and the
starkness.
Yes,
Right.
the starkness of it.
So even if they were wearing, completely different, costumes, you could tell
Yes,
just
you
by
can
the
still-
severity.
Yep,
This is
just
who they
look in a
are.
room and say, "Oh, yep, those are archivists."
All right, got
And
it.
that's really the goal for any of these is to be able to look at a group of people and
Yeah.
be like, "Oh, those are that."
Right.
The term that gets used in design a lot is silhouette.
Yes.
Your silhouette is sort of how you can be perceived before anyone can even see the details of your costume.
Yeah, just
Right.
by the outline of you.
Yes.
Now, I know that Team Fortress 2 has a bunch of stuff in it where there's like a director's commentary almost. And there's a section of that I remember where they talk about the different looks of each of the characters. Because when your entire team is one color,
Yeah, they have incredibly distinct
the
silhouettes.
thing that
Yes.
you need to be able to do is look at the shape of that thing and know what's going on.
Yep.
Yeah, and it's really valuable for just trying to put a look together. Do you want to, when someone is seeing you from afar, do you want to stand out? Do you want to look tough? Do you want to sort of slide around the side of vision and not be seen? Do you want to? Do you not?
Do you want to communicate what it
Yeah.
is that your
What
character
are
does?
what are you trying to communicate?
Am I a soldier?
Yeah.
Am I a newsman?
Yeah. So what are some of the interesting, well, for you, what would be the most fun project that you've worked on, either past or present?
I will say that I have, as crazy a thing as it was, I have a real fondness in my heart for the Pacific Rim game that we did, and working on the kaiju and the drive suits. And now I honestly wasn't the chief builder on any of those. We had Wright Rickman, Skylar Howland, Jed Bechdel, Ralph Anastasia were the primary constructors of each of these things.
So
but
before we go into it, let's talk a little bit more specifically about what that Pacific Rim game was. This is a LARP that was run at DexCon a number of years ago, and the players played characters in that world. And there was an element of course, you need to have the Jaegers and the kaiju and a city. And all of this was constructed.
God help us, we built all of it.
Now, not just the kaiju and the Jaeger fight, where you had NPCs, I believe, playing them, being
Yes.
more or less guided and piloted by the
PCs,
players.
yes.
Now, the players are watching a lot of this on camera. So you guys have like a live feed to a different room that
Yes.
is a small city setup.
Tiny Seattle, yes.
Yeah, with Space Needle,
Yep.
which
Which
may or may not
Kate-
have been.
Came into play during the combat.
It might have been designed to be a boffer weapon. And at the same time all this is going on, you have this entire cityscape. The area where the players were had a hand
Yep.
that was from floor to ceiling, just a sculpted, I don't know what else to call it, but a sculpture.
Yeah, that was Anthony and Beth, I think, who were taking point on that one. Boy, we still have the fingers. The hand,
The palm was just too much.
the palm was too much. We just packing that game down was a thing.
Yeah, how much of that had to be like done, assembled on site?
A great deal of it. We had like the fingers were a thing. We had to sort of assemble the palm there. Honestly, it was.
I only ever got to walk through.
We lucked out because the game that was supposed to run the night before us wound up being canceled from lack of players. So we were in there setting up from as soon as the evening game ended, like 10, I think. We were in there from 11 through to the next morning.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh, wow.
Ian fell asleep with his face on the wall, standing, putting up posters. Sean, I think, fell asleep in the sea in tiny Seattle. Yeah.
I mean, how often do you get to, be a giant in a tiny city?
That it was kind of enjoyable. We went through a tiny city. We would set it up in the driveway and be like, "Arr." But yeah, like, so much went into the building of tiny Seattle itself, but there was still all of these like disparate parts and helping people get their costumes together, because that is one of the things that I also wind up doing for the games that we run, is wrangling the costumes for the NPCs. For our upcoming game, that's particularly a thing because it is set in the world of Star Wars. So
nice.
yeah.
Not that there aren't 1,000 Star Wars figures right behind you.
Yeah, approximately. That's just the ones there. They're in the walls. They're all around.
Got very Lovecraft for a second. Instead of the rats, it's
That's one of
just Kenner action figures.
That's one of our other tropes that we explore a lot. Star Wars Lovecraft mashup. Here it comes. Anyway.
Nice.
So we've got to get to. I'm working on a hut right now. We've got to get to.
Ooh,
nice.
Yeah.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah, we got to get together a Rhodian.
How much creature design stuff have you gotten to work on?
Again, because
we were talking a little bit about the Jaegers and the kaiju for the Pacific Rim game. Now you're working on a hut. Have there been any other creature characters that you really liked working on, or?
Most of the other creature stuff that we have done has been for Ex-Arcana, and that's been sort of more humanoid in scale, but that's also like how to make something that is creepy and unsettling. Going back to Lovecraft, how to make something that is creepy and unsettling in a more sort of human scale. Like the kaiju and the Jaegers are over the top,
right.
and again, I've turned to others for design for that because my design skills go only so far. Like on the more human level, we've done a couple of different critters for Ex-Arcana. One that I haven't gotten to play with yet, and still have to at some point.
It's just ideas in development, or
yes. And there's one that I have the start of. I have the start of the costume for, and it came out of a piece of fabric that does a thing. And I'm like, ooh, I have. So the piece of fabric gave birth to the idea for making it into a creature for a game.
Just because of the qualities of this fabric?
Because of the qualities of this fabric.
That's awesome.
Yes, and I'll show it to you later if you want.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No,
because it's cool, and then you can get a little sneak preview.
So
nice.
also,
I do that.
for anyone that's listening that might not know, what's Ex-Arcana?
Oh, Ex-Arcana is a game that Sean and I and Josh Jaffe and Atvolk put together. That is a game of retrofuture magic, in which there's a secret society of magicians who fought a great war with evil magicians around the turn of the 19th into 20th century, causing the shutdown of magic for 100 years, now coming back into the world, and it's the conflict between the old guard who have been asleep in stasis for 100 years, coming back to teach the new magicians who have no idea why they're throwing fireballs, but also have a social security number, know how to use a cell phone.
Nice. And this is run as a parlor game, correct?
Yes, this is a parlor game based on the Kronos system.
Yeah, which we've talked about in the past, so hopefully
Yes.
people already know what that is.
Yeah.
And you guys have run this at like conventions and also the Lovecraft Bar out
Yes,
in New York.
and we're in the process of finding a new venue for it because sadly things with the Lovecraft went south. Boy, venues are a thing for LARP.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know.
You can make any LARP runner groan by just saying venues. Am I right?
Yeah.
In the episode that just dropped at time of recording this week is with Dave Morris, and we have an entire little
Oh,
aside
yeah.
where we talk about hunting for
Yeah.
campsites and things like that.
Campsites.
It is definitely
places where they will let you gather and do weird things in weird clothes.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
For as little money as possible.
So what do you like? I mean, what are the most current things that you're working on now?
Most current things I'm working on now are there's a bunch of stuff for Far, Far Away, which is this event that's upcoming because that's in 3 weeks. And so I'm doing a hut for that, and I'm helping to wrangle our NPCs' costumes. We need a Rhodian. We have, thankfully, as a gift as a loan from Jen, we have a Togrutan head. Just pulling together I have to go through what essentially is a rental house of costuming now. Over the time in running games and being in games,
Yeah.
Sean and I essentially have a small warehouse now of props and costumes and can pretty much pull a game of most settings
and styles.
out of our ass. Yeah, so I'm in the process of doing that.
Yeah, like any particular hobby, you just gain minutia and stuff for it. It just happens that, the nerd hobby's got a little bit more large-scale stuff.
Yep.
Yes, one of the good things about this game that's upcoming is that part of it involves a lot of stuff piled into a room.
Like you do.
Like you do. We did a sort of test run of this at Gen Con, but the nice thing is that we can throw away a bunch of it afterwards. So we don't have to pack it in, we don't have to pack it out.
Oh, nice.
Which is
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, logistics are a real thing.
Logistics. Learning how to, just getting a setup down. All right, this is the lights bucket. This is the bucket of just fabric that goes on things. Actually, set dressing is something that I've found myself is like a sort of secondary design thing that I find myself doing a lot in games.
Yeah, because it's still very much a visual design.
Making hotel rooms not look like hotel rooms, for one.
Yeah.
That's huge
Yeah.
because depending on your hotel, oh god, the learning center, it's so ugly.
Yeah, it's a business center.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
it's
not
all
designed to
fluorescence
have-
and everything. But so you have to work around that
Yeah.
and like building a stock of things that help you transform a space from another hotel room to another world.
Right.
Is something that I've wound up doing, and just like now we have all these little. Just being able to sort of
knickknacks
explode
and
into the
cloth
space
to throw
in a
and-
way that changes it, and then be able to pack it all away.
Right. All right. So we're kind of winding down at this point. What kind of advice would you give someone who wants to, might be a gamer or not even a gamer, someone who's interested in design or construction? Like, what kind of advice would you give those folks to move them forward? Like, what would you say to them?
It's a really good time for learning construction and for working on building your own stuff, because there are resources like Pinterest, like Google, like the YouTube videos. You can pretty much learn how to construct anything off of YouTube right now.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of places to turn to, and there's a lot of more crowdsourcing abilities than you've ever had before.
Yeah,
there are
and
communities that you can reach out to.
Depending on where you are, there's even things like maker spaces where you can go and take a class.
Exactly. It's actually really funny. There's a business called Manhattan Wardrobe Supply, which, as it says on the tin, has been vending stuff to people in the theatrical and film wardrobe industry for years now. They have recently embraced cosplay.
Oh, very
which
cool.
Is a
Oh.
great. They had a booth at New York Comic Con recent, like this last one, because for some reason, even though there's been a huge boom of film and ever more incredible theatrical pieces in New York, costumes is sort of left on the back burner. Sexism. And so the fashion district has taken a lot of hits. Like they've just rezoned it, so a lot of the sellers of fabric and stuff are going to have to move to a different part of New York, so it's getting priced out
because Manhattan real estate is
Manhattan real estate, and the benefits that they had from staying in the garment district are being taken away. And I think what Manhattan Wardrobe Supply is doing is really smart by sort of latching on to another burgeoning industry that is
totally in their wheelhouse.
That is totally in their wheelhouse, and that will enhance their business enough to allow them to keep their space and not have to go from
It's almost
there.
like a self-advertising way of doing it, too.
Yeah, it very much is. So now now I know where to go to get like Warbla and Foss Shape and all these, the crazy like thermoplastics and various stuff that you can get now.
Yeah,
but the resources are out there.
You don't need vacuum tables so much anymore now that we've got Warbla. You get a heat gun, you can shape that however you want.
No, it's really interesting stuff. I didn't realize that it was like suspended sawdust.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
It's significantly wood.
Yeah, it's basically wood. Foss Shape is also really cool. I learned about that stuff in grad school, and it's really neat. It's a thermoplastic foam, not felt. So it's like spongy, and you can shape it with steam, or you can press it so that it's flat, and then it holds its shape, and you can so it's really good to
is
shape
this like
over
a fabric
things.
thickness, or
it's like you can get it in a couple of different thicknesses. It starts like either like 3/8 or a quarter, and then you can iron it down. Like you need a good iron, but you can iron it down to like almost a 1/16 of an inch.
Oh wow! Damn.
And it's neat stuff. But yeah, it's a good time to be a builder. So just explore, like build yourself folders, like save yourself a channel of people that you follow, like make your folders, like look for what appeals to you and try it out, try it on. There's another piece of advice. This was something that came up, is that once you've got your LARP costume together, put it all on.
Yeah.
Before you go to the LARP.
Yeah. See, can you
do not put it on for the first time at the LARP?
Through the door?
Yes.
I've personally had that issue.
Yeah.
Where I'm at a fantasy game and I'm covered in like a bow and arrow and quiver and packs and.
Are your daggers actually going to stay in your belt? Are you going to need something else to keep them there? Is that pack that looked so cool actually going to stay closed, or is it going to keep flapping open and drop all your crap on the ground?
When you go to sit down, is it going to dump out?
Mm-hmm.
Is it going to let you sit down?
Part of why Army Surplus is so great, because
that's already been designed to do the job.
And it's neutral. Again, start when you can't do exactly what you want to do. Go neutral.
Yeah,
it's less immersion breaking.
And I can tell you from personal experiences, real sombreros do not ever use as costuming.
Oh God, no!
Can't get through the door. No. Heavy as hell.
Yep.
Will
Real
break your
heavy.
neck. Yeah, that's why it hangs on my wall and lives there, except for New Year's Eve.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, it is your business sombrero.
It is truly my business sombrero.
One of the big things that we like to talk about on here, obviously, is community and the community supporting each other.
Mm-hmm.
If there are organizations that you support and you are one of these people that's in the gaming community making games or participating in games, there are avenues.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
We recently went full nonprofit because it's like we're not making a lot in this business right now as it is. And honestly, what we would like to do is be able to do something good with the small amount that we have.
We all play these games and get involved in them because we love them, because they're fun. We can take having fun and do something legitimately good in the world with it.
Yep.
Yes.
Take it that extra step and just, do more.
So we, of course, will beg you for all kinds of links and
of course.
pictures.
I'll send you all of these things.
I have to know what your hut looks like.
Oh yeah. Don't you worry.
Yeah. I think that's going to be amazing.
We'll link people to your Pinterest page, maybe.
Yes, please.
All sorts of whatever you want to send us.
I will send you all kinds of things.
Yeah, we'll put everything in our show notes. That'll go out as soon as this goes out. So, Megan, thank you so much for sitting down.
Thank you guys so much. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah. And so.
And with that, we've been Old Man and Skinny Guy.
I'm Old Man.
I'm the Skinny Guy, and we'll catch you next time.
And remember, don't dream it, be it. Take care.